Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. I'll take about 20 minutes just letting you know my side of the business, malting versus feed, premiums versus standard, segregations, etc. So I'm pleased to be able to have my input so you understand where my industry is coming from. So just by way of preamble, Boortmalt is the largest malting company in the world. We've produced about 3 million tons of malt per year. Here in Australia, we are the largest malting company here in Australia. I have a national capacity of about 550,000 tons of malt. So my competitors are a little bit smaller. So we have quite an influence both in the market and within our exports as well. My market is predominantly, or has been for many years, up into Asia, North and South Asia. Of recent times, it's diversified considerably. Some of it due to the acquisition of Boortmalt, but others due to market events outside, which we are seeing a bit of a change. So, global barley malting markets. First of all, I just want to outline where the malt market is for you, and then I'll drop back down into barley in a minute. We've all experienced price pressures. We've seen it all in all our businesses. There's general anxiety around supply of malt. Prices have gone up considerably, at least 2.5 times on the historical average, and you're seeing that yourself with your returns and prices that are being posted in the market. I'm mainly export. As I said, the domestic market will probably use about 120,000 tons. Total capacity for me is 520, so I'm predominantly export focused as well. And we are working with the bulk handler as well. We share cargoes, etc., when we're going into common markets. Logistics, big problem at the moment. That's been a 15-20% increase, in some markets 50% or more. And then energy. Energy for me is a big consumer. I'm seeing big increases in energy, 3 or 4 times what they were probably 12 months ago. So we're seeing big movements. And so you can see what has happened in the malt price. Oh, I'm sorry, back. So you can see what has happened in malt pricing. The biggest input in malt are 2 factors. One is barley, by far and away the biggest, and the second one is energy. Those are 2 big commodities that we are consuming within the business. So malt demand, I think someone was speaking about malt demand. There's an increased malt demand because of people coming out of COVID. There's a lot of celebrations, a lot of economies are starting to open up. So there's big malt demand. We're seeing about an extra 1 million tons globally post-COVID in malt demand. And again, that's the market shrink, and then it is recovering. Done it again. We expect some additional increase going on within 2025. Malt that goes into beer is reasonably inelastic. People are talking about recessions, but beer generally is recession-proof. People might go from wine or spirits to wine to beer. If they go to beer, they might go down to a lesser premium beer. But generally, beer demand is reasonably inelastic. That's what we find within our market. Malt production, you can see we are, all malting companies globally at the moment are running at over 100% capacity. My business is particularly running over capacity, big demand, because brewers have to replenish stocks, replenish pipelines, and there are big consumer demand within the markets. So we have a big pressure to deliver malt out to customers. As I said, all markets are increasing. We're about 104% here in Australia. You can see USA, North America, South America. Even in Africa, there's some increase in Africa because they are coming out of COVID recession. We have a malting plant in Ethiopia, and so we are seeing some big demand in our Ethiopian business as well. So as I said at the beginning, there's been a diversification in the malt business over recent years. As I said, some as a consequence of my company's global footprint, others as a consequence of external events that have happened in the last 2 to 3 years in relation to supply, relation to droughts, etc. So now this is the traditional markets are at the front end here. Vietnam is a big market, Korea, Japan, Philippines. People will be familiar with those markets. But now we are moving down into Ethiopia. We're exporting to Ethiopia. South Africa is now buying again. Before they were, they didn't used to buy, then they had their own capacity, now they're buying again as well. And we are going into Africa, into Peru, and to Congo. So those are all African markets that we are supplying out of Australia, out of Perth, and going into those markets. So you can see we are getting a diversification of supply, and it's West Australian barley that is going into many of those markets, of course. To put this in context, Australian malt exports for 2021 were about 740,000 tonnes or thereabouts. You can see 2020 was the COVID. We had idled plants across Australia, and we idled some within our group. So there's a big recovery post-COVID, you can see. And even 2019, again, we're about 720,000 tonnes. So we are seeing an increase. Part of that is because I've also bought a mothballed malting plant up to production as well. It's not here in Perth, it's in South Australia. So again, I'm using more malting barley to meet that particular market. There are people here much more experienced than me to talk about malting barley market, so I won't probably go into that because I don't want to repeat and we have limited time. So from the customer's point of view, this is the brewers predominantly. I sell to distillers and I sell to food companies, but predominantly brewers, they make about 90% of malt demand within my business and globally as well. So the political shocks and climate-affected changes, brewers are getting worried about strategic supply. They want to secure supply. They want to know that they want to put the responsibility on me to meet their requirements. So rather than typically many have bought spot, but now they're looking towards LTAs, long-term agreements, and they're talking multi-year agreements. So what they're in fact doing, they are locking in volume. You have a pricing model, and so they are putting the risk of supply back onto me. And for me, I'm then speaking to the bulk handlers, I'm speaking with growers directly, so we try and get a closed-loop market, we put some certainty in the business, and so people can plan it. Pricing is always on an annual basis. It's fair to say because of the market dynamics that occurs. I spoke about increase in prices earlier. You can see there's a comment there. People like Heineken are projecting an increase of about 15%, and they're increasing their prices by about 4 to 5% in Europe. They're doing it elsewhere in other commodities. Heineken is the number 2 global brewer, and so they are a reasonable benchmark in relation to what's happening globally. Other international brewers, and even regional brewers, and even national brewers, they're all taking price increases in raw materials and inputs, not only malt, but in packaging and energy and all that, so they're also increasing their prices. So if you've got some spare dollars in your pocket, I suggest you go and buy some beer and put it in your fridge ready, because prices will probably go up. Probably about, I can't speak for the brewers, but prices will definitely go up for sure. And as I said earlier, beer is reasonably inelastic in price. So the demand is constant there. People tend to trade down. And so there is always going to be a demand for beer. And then at the brewery level, there's mergers and acquisitions going on. A lot of the major breweries, and you see it elsewhere within the world too, they're moving and speaking with craft brewers. They're having relationships. They are buying equity or they are buying them out. So again, the craft segment, I think Jack spoke about it earlier. It's a very dynamic segment. It's growing. It's still a very small percentage of the Australian total beer market, but it's a drive towards premium. A lot of people are wanting to drink the premium beers, which mainly where the craft brewers are fundamentally producing. So for the APAC region, as I said, tourism is booming. Probably everybody here has been out of the country, or at least out of the state, in the last 4 to 5 months since the borders opened up. It is booming. Difficult to get a plane seat to go out of the country. The beer market has recovered, but as I said earlier, supply chain issues. I know it's a live issue here as well. I'm having enormous difficulty, and my competitors are globally getting to market. because of what's happening in the logistics side. Not only bulk shipments, but in container shipments as well. Even internally, getting truck drivers. There are huge supply costs that are being picked up, and you probably see it taking your grain into the receival stations. It's a real challenge at the moment to get a smooth logistics execution. Malt beer in use is steadily increasing as a premium beer. There is a trend towards quality. We spoke about craft earlier. People are looking to trade up to try craft beers, which are generally 100% malt. They've got some other ingredients in it as well, and that is generally what's regarded as a premium beer, along with some of the major international brewers. They've also got premium brands as well, where they're using 100% malt. So it's malt, hops, water, and yeast. That's what they are producing. And then the buzzword has been mentioned a couple of times is sustainability. There's a lot of activity going on in that space. We spoke about it here. It's driven by the consumer. They're talking low or zero carbon foodstuffs. It's happening in the beer industry. It's happening in my industry. And so we are seeing it continually now that there's this awareness and this expectation that the malt that I supply, and indeed the barley that I'm buying, moves towards that reduced carbon footprint and even zero carbon. And so products are being developed and marketed with that particular in mind. Some of the major international brewers are way ahead of some of them here, but we are catching up very, very quickly. And then the other comment is malt barley prices have increased relative to feed. There's a big demand for malting barley. As I said earlier, we're going into new markets as well. China is not buying malting barley from Australia, but they're buying it elsewhere. But the Australian market, I think the market has done a very, very good job to recover that malt market, because malt is important in the barley sector. It's not all feed. Sorry, Jason, I don't agree with you. Malting barley is a premium product. It likes good quality, consistency, and will always be a market for it. And I think farmers need to be, growers need to be encouraged to think about it as a premium product. I know I have to pay a premium, but I expect to pay a premium too, because I'm expecting improved quality and a consistent quality. And there'll always be a market for quality. Might not be the bug seller like feed is, but there'll always be a market for it. And I think that's important that we recognize that. Some people have spoken about Megan spoke about the variety development. I won't go into that. But as an observation, there's a rapid change of barley varieties. I think Megan said there were three or four barley varieties which are in stage 2. There's another 3 or 4 coming through stage 1. There's a rapid turn of barley varieties. No sooner as a grower got adapted and accustomed to growing a particular variety and knowing how to manage it, then there's a new variety on the horizon. Here in West Australia, we have Spartacus, and Maximus is coming through. We're interested in Maximus. We think it's going to be very, very good. But then you need segregations if you're having all these varieties through, and that's another challenge. And we also need some of the niche varieties as well that we were speaking about earlier. Because some brewers do have particular specifications where we'll say the mainstream varieties don't necessarily meet the specification that the brewer is looking for, and which in turn I'm looking for, because I have to malt the barley to meet the brewer's specification, which can be quite difficult if you don't have the right quality profile. Again, we spoke about that. So we spoke about kiwi, we spoke about bottler, but we do need a variety of varieties. We do need a mix of varieties. We certainly need mainstream, no question, but we also need some of the niche varieties, as I said earlier, that we can generate and grow in the business. Even those attract a premium over the premium, because we need them to meet customers' requirements when we are actually malting. And then desirable traits. Fermentability is always an issue. Extract, of course, is from maltster's point of view. Extract is always one of the targets, one of the grails that we like to reach. So from the barley breeder's point of view, they have it very, very difficult for breeding for malting. Not only are they trying to keep up with the yield, and I've been out of the country for a number of years, but when I came back, I was really, really surprised at just how much the yield of malting barleys have increased over the years. And then the other thing is, of course, brewers want extract because extract is money. And so malting varieties with high extract and a good yield, then that's where the premium comes in. Feed varieties generally don't have a high extract, and that costs the brewer money. So he wouldn't be willing to pay, we'll say perhaps a premium, if he's going to get an FAQ industrial grade barley, because he can't meet the extract, it doesn't have the enzyme package he's looking for. And so again, it's got to be fit for use for the market. And I think it's important that, that we have that focus. There's always going to be a place for feed. All the years I've been in the industry, feed has always been there. Oh, can it be used as a feed? Can it be used as a feed? Of course it can. The other question is, well, can we use it for malting? Would it make a malting variety, and can we get a premium for it? Premiums now, as I'm sure many of you will know, are at a record high at the moment. Premiums that are being paid for malting barley, and I'm paying them as well, are at record highs. And that's testament to the fact that there are good malting varieties available, and there is that point of distinction between feed and malt. And then we were speaking then about traits, about fermentability. And of course, the one that's now gaining visibility is sustainability. As I said at the beginning, the malting industry is very energy intensive. We use a lot of water, a lot of energy, heat and electrical energy. And so part of my company's ambition is to reduce our carbon footprint. And so from a malting point of view, if I can reduce my input cost to produce malt, that fundamentally comes down to the variety that's being malted, then that adds value. Not only to the price that I can pay, but adds value to the customer as well. So I'm using less resources, less input. As I said, energy is, at the moment, is very high. I don't know whether energy is going to come off, whether we've seen the lows 12 months ago, and now we've reached a new plateau. I don't know that. But irrespective, the carbon footprint that myself as an industry is generating, and then we talk about scope 1, 2, and 3, so all along the supply chain, is something that's front and center. And if we being the malting industry, can do our bit to reduce our impact, that's what we want to do. And we can do that by influencing the barley breeding programs as well. We're also doing process innovations. So again, it's a combined industry effort. Breeders, growers, maltsters, brewers. It's got to be a continuum. And then it's a closed loop. You go back again. And that's the direction that we're heading. Here in Australia, we're not up to we're not up to the level that some of my sister companies are in Europe, but we're moving in that direction. And I think it's important. We at least recognize that we have an ambition to get there. If we don't, we're going to lose it, of course. And again, we have to keep innovating and being smart and thinking about the way we work in relation to the industry, and particularly barleys. Barleys, for me, as I said, I can't do anything without barley. So I need your help to help me, to help the bigger industry. So closer to home, in the West Australian focus, we spoke about Spartacus to Maximus. There's greater varieties here. It relies on the bulk handlers, Jason, for segregations and to make it available. That's how it's going to get acceptance. Growers need to see it. There's no point in growing if it has to go into the feed bin, because for me, I need homogeneous varieties. That's what's required for my production and for my customers. The other point is non-additive barley. In the malting industry, we do use additives. We want to get away from that, but not all barley varieties are adapted to use non-additives. And so in that context, we want to move to non-additive grains, which will modify, produce the extract in a lesser time. It's almost the holy grail, really. But so we have to start on that, and that's where we see the pipeline is going. There's been a bit of a less of a focus on that, but it's something that we need to be able to start to push along. This is anecdotal, and I'm happy for someone here to contradict me. We've noticed an increased frequency of non-germinating barley over the last couple of seasons. We don't know whether it's climatic, whether the way it's stored, or some other trait within the barley, But I'd be interested to get feedback if anybody has noticed a similar thing. Maybe you haven't noticed it because you're not germinating the barley like I am within the business, but certainly it's something that we've noticed. We think it's probably climatic, but okay, it probably is, but we don't know yet, and we're looking at that as well. And the other thing, and there was another discussion here about receival standards, the trend towards GTA receival standards. For me, it's disappointing. We are seeing a move towards FAQ, and it touches on something that Jason was speaking about. We don't have any problem with subjective tests being changed, but they need to be exchanged with something definitive, so we know exactly what we're talking about. There's falling number of ale or whatever, so we at least know what we're buying from a maltster's point of view. And so it's something that we need to, well, for my industry, we need to focus on, and we need to start thinking about it, but more seriously, given the trend within the industry. And that's something that's close to my heart. And just finally, I'll take 2 more minutes. To speak about what we are doing as a group for sustainability, because as I said, we're actually walking the talk, we're actually doing it. So across the group, we have 4 core objectives. This is globally I'm talking about. Obviously, health and safety, 0 injuries, that goes without saying. That's a given. I'm sure every one of you have that target as an objective, no question. And then by 2030, 31, we're looking for 30% reduction in water. The malting process involves steeping water, which is immersing in water over a period of time, 2 or sometimes 3 times. So we're looking at minimizing that. We want 50% of our barley base is sustainably farmed globally. And then a 50% emissions reduction, which is carbon footprint, running our plants and how we minimize, as I said, the carbon energy consumptions that we're using. And what that means, and I won't go into all of this slide, but what this means from a sustainable farming point of view, which is the focus of today's discussion, is 100% SIA or equivalent certified in farms in Europe, and 50% in others, like we spoke about ISCC. So that's something that we are actively promoting and working at. 50% dedicated carbon measured supply chains. We are looking at how we are delivering our barley to our plant, how we are growing the barley, how we are securing and harvesting it. We're looking at regenerative farming. Early days, I was speaking with someone here earlier this afternoon. We're speaking about regenerative farming or carbon zero or carbon sequestration. We're at the beginning of that journey. The problem, as I see it, is establishing a consistent base data so that you have a comparison that you can work against. And there's lots of different models, the Cool Farm tool, et cetera, and all those types of things which are being developed. We've started some work over here in West Australia. We're doing a bit over in the East as well. And we're doing it with some of our customers as well. I think you heard Jack King talk about Heineken. There's other brewers as well who are moving into that space as well. And this is our sustainable farming roadmap as to where we want to get to. I won't go into all of that, but the point I want to make is that we've got a clear mapped out, a clear roadmap with milestones that we want to get to that 2030 target. And we can only do it if we have industry participation. And we appreciate growers. Growers are in business to make money, of course they are too, but they also want to be sustainable as well. So we are expecting, we have seen much uptake from growers who want to be involved and get on top of this particular segment of their farming activity. It's not only barley, of course, it goes everywhere else into wheat, etc. So that's where we are as a group, and in particular what we're doing here in West Australia. So in conclusion, I touched on premiums, the strong premiums for the current crop, and there'll probably be strong premiums for crop 23. I don't know about 24, but you tell me what's going to happen in Europe and elsewhere. But I think we'll continue to see premiums. I think we've got a different floor now within the business. Part of the reason for price driving was, of course, crop failures globally. For those of you who may not, we had 2 crop years in a row in New South Wales where the crops failed. Here in West Australia, you were reliable. You guys, every year, you're able to turn out a crop. But we've seen drought conditions in New South Wales. Last year, we're just about to harvest, and bang, we got the floods. This year we got floods before even farmers can get in the ground. Here, I think all of you are probably smiling. Your crop's out of the ground and you're feeling quite comfortable. So these are the, that's what's happening here in Australia, and in Canada they had a drought. Clearly, you all know that. They had problems in Europe, and that's driven up the prices, let alone the political situation in Eastern Europe as well. Malting premiums are going to be there. Has to be. Been there for time immemorial, and they'll continue to be there. So, and we expect to pay a premium, but at the same time, we expect the quality too. So this diminution, as I said earlier, this moving towards FAQ industrial grade, isn't really going to help malting premiums. And to do that, to keep malting premiums, you need segregations, you need clear practices and everything else to ensure that particular activity. Diversification of varieties. There'll still be weather events, but farming is related to weather. I take it none of you will think the crop safe till it's in the bin. And I really admire the optimism of growers because I think it's a really, really challenging profession. Global brewers, they are thinking more strategically now. I should have mentioned that earlier. Global brewers now are thinking more strategically. Too long they've relied on just chasing price in a particular region. Now they're saying, oh, if I don't have malt, I'm out of business. So they're building in insurance into their procurement strategies. I spoke earlier about markets we're going into now. That is entirely because brewers are reappraising their strategic supply chain. Where are we going to get our business from? How can we insure our business? And we are seeing that clearly across the business. And as I said, finally, we have to work collaboratively. Brewers, maltsters, farmers, breeders, because our livelihood depends on it. And it can we can't do it individually. We need everybody in the tent. And I think, for me, that's where we need to be from a business point of view. I see I'm out on the clock, but I know there's 5 minutes. I don't know why I'm exactly for time. Did you put 20 or 25? Okay, I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has anything.
Hi. Sorry, over here. Do you want to stand up? Sorry. Sarah, just a quick question. Would you look at long-term agreements with growers? I've got two questions. That's the first one. Second one is, if you were to look at long-term agreements with growers, would you also fund them for their capital infrastructure to have their own on-farm storage so you knew the quality in the outturn would maybe meet your specifications based on the variety they grow?
The answer to that question is generally yes, because we are looking for niche varieties. The bulk handlers don't necessarily want to be bothered with smaller segregations. So in that context, yes, the only way I can do that is to get them out of the supply chain and for them to store on farm. Now, if we can come to a commercial arrangement where a farmer has certainty to invest and there's some pricing mechanism, then of course the answer has to be yes.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Hey, Ian. Just with your goal of 50% sustainable certified, so SAI. So in Australia, we've got ISCC that's compatible with SAI. Are there any other certification schemes that have come up that
You mean in Australia or globally?
Yeah, in Australia. Sorry.
We prefer to work with ISCC because it's a common, it's in the wheat industry too, as I understand it as well. It's something that growers are familiar with. And so we don't want to reinvent the wheel every time. So we're trying to adapt to the ISCC, and I think we've sourced over 50% of our barley needs current crop, SAI, ISCC. A large percentage of that is through CBH and farmers of West Australia.
Right. Thank you.
Ian, two questions. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Just on long-term investments, do you think there's now enough optimism in the malting industry with these demands for longer-term contracts with brewers to start investing in infrastructure in Australia, given that it's probably a 3-year build to get a new malting plant up and operational? So is there the confidence there to now start thinking about that? And the second one is a beef that I have about the blurring of what sustainability means. And as farmers are heavily dependent on chemistries to actually maintain soil health by going to no-till and so forth. And it seems to me in Europe, the whole idea of sustainability and reducing carbon footprint and all those things that we know are real and we need to address are becoming blurred with this green food image where quite benign chemistries are getting banned. Where do you sit and do you see that there is actually a distinction in the industry between those two components of what some people think is sustainability?
Well, so there's 2 points to your question. One is about future investment within the industry. They say one swallow doesn't make a summer. And it's perfectly true that at the moment, the industry generally is buoyant. I don't know whether that's going to stay. We have to take a long-term view. If you're going to build a malting plant, you're talking 30, 40 years. So one swallow doesn't make a summer. Yes, the businesses are strong at the moment. 5, 6 years ago, it wasn't. What's it going to be 5 or 6 years' time? So you've got to have a long-term vision as to whether you're going to invest in the business. And our Boortmalt's future is in sustainability. We believe that by investing in sustainability, we reduce our input costs, so we remain to be competitive. So it's a question that then we remain attractive to customers, and so they want to come. So that's the first point. In relation to sustainability, you're going in an area that I'm not 100% full bottle on, but as a company, we are very focused on tangible outcomes. So we know we have to determine base data, and then we got something to reference to. We don't want to get into the blurry side where you just feel good. We want to have tangible outcome and data to support our business modelling. If that answers your question.
All right, I think we'll. How quick's your question going to be, David?
As quick as Ian can answer it. David Clegg from Seednet. You talk about niche varieties.
Yep.
What do you consider the volume of a niche variety is? At the moment, when we do our segregation planning, we do it on a port zone basis.
Yep.
And then you're talking about grower scale basis for
Yep.
storage. Which is where do you consider a niche?
Well, first of all, there's obviously two different business models. I don't know what Jason regards as a volume to be mainstream. So I can't answer that. Maybe you can answer that, Jason. But from my point of view, if I'm talking niche varieties, here in West Australia, I am buying just under 300,000 tonne of malting barley. If I can buy 10% or even 15% of that, I'd be happy. But I struggle. I struggle to get that. I struggle. So then I've got to use it judiciously and everything else. We're trying to reach out to growers to have those direct one-on-one contracts because we think that's the only way we can secure that barley. So we know in the eastern states we are contracting directly with growers on varieties because the mainstream can't be segregated and it gets lost in the feed pool.
Maybe 2 seconds just on niche segregations and taking into account exactly what Ian was saying, which is correct. At CBH, we look at really the development of that variety, and particularly in the beginning, we obviously have smaller segregations for new varieties, and then there's a point as an industry we decide on the other side, where a variety is going out when it actually ends up becoming a feed variety because the industry actually decides that in the end. But generally with segregations, obviously it depends on the year, etc. But we sort of work to the 5 to 10,000 tonnes as a segregation is really required to make it a segregation. In normal years, of course, different sites and different regions have different requirements.
Okay, thanks, Jason.
All right. Thanks, Ian.
Good, thank you.